Right, good evening, everyone, and welcome back from our summer break. I hope you've had a very wonderful summer. So I'll just get straight into our meeting. I believe our agenda was shared. It's a memorandum dated September 2nd. And the first item on the agenda, and actually I must recognize that this night's meeting is a joint meeting with Land Use and our Housing Committee. I'll start first with the first agenda item, which is the Department of City Planning application, Wakefield Village. Do we have the representatives at the meeting?
Yes, we're here.
Why don't I ask, please, for the presenter to identify him or herself, and then we can begin.
Sure. Good evening, everyone. This is Ron Schulman with Best Development Group. We're representing the Wakefield Village team. I'm from Best Development Group, and we have with us a whole professional team that has been working on this project for the last 5 years. So we thank you for inviting us to your Land Use and Housing Committee meeting. We have a PowerPoint presentation. We'll run through it. Probably takes 12 or 15 minutes or so. And then we'll answer any questions or if you have any comments. And as always, we always have a continuous dialogue with all the public agencies and participants. So we always invite questions. You know, if you have some tomorrow or next week, just send them along. So this is a project that is right off the 241st Street, Wakefield Avenue Bridge going south, which is a large parking lot right now, flat parking lot. Dove, if you could go to the next screen, please. So the development team is made up of the landowners, which is Webster Leasing LLC, co-developer. The builder is Joy Construction and Development, and we are Best Development Group. We're the team executive and co-developer. Land Use Council is Ackerman LLP. Government and Community Relations is Constantinople and Bologna. Project Master Architect is Newman Architects from New Haven. The building architect will be GF55 Architecture. Project Landscape Architect is MPFP Architects. And environmental and transportation planning is from Sam Schwartz Engineering. Next slide. The proposed development is this large site, which is just about 6 acres of land. And we will have 2.3 acres of public open and green space offered to the public and the residents of this development. The estimated overall floor area is about 1,040,000 square feet. And we're looking to offer diverse housing options in the developments in 5 buildings. 3 mixed income family buildings, 1 dedicated senior housing building, 1 homeownership building for approximately 1,193 units. There will also be ground floor retail to the tune of 27,746 square feet of retail and community facility space about 78,345 square feet, which could also accommodate a potential new school.
Okay, can I stop you for a second? I think our district manager has something you need to say right quick. I apologize.
Sure, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm sorry. This is kind of small on my screen. I was hoping maybe you could do the full presentation mode. Yeah, that one. Yeah, thank you. Much better.
Okay. Oh, you're welcome, George. Okay. So again, we're going to show you lots of different renderings from different vantage points, and I think that'll give you a good idea. We'll also share this so you can keep it. As I said, there'll be a lot of community facility space, which could also accommodate a new school, and 617 parking spaces, which will be in a deck below this development. We have to build a podium to get to the height of 241st Street, Wakefield Avenue, and there'll be parking below, kind of like in a shopping center, sort of. Next slide, please. So the site, as you know, is bordered by the 241st Street Wakefield Avenue Bridge, and then the Harlem and New Haven train lines from Metro North. The cursor is showing you right now. The Wakefield Metro North station is diagonally across the street, which presently serves commuters who have to actually get out of their car and run downstairs. We're going to make a much more safe departure into the station, and you'll see that soon. This is kind of a site unto itself, next to the Wakefield neighborhood, not exactly in it, but down the hill from White Plains Road on 241st Street. And as you can see, the Bronx River Parkway is right there, as well as those 2 train lines. Next slide. The site is a transit-oriented development because we have the luck of having the Metro North Wakefield Station diagonally across the street. Wakefield Station is not as much used as the ones north and south, Mount Vernon West and Woodlawn, but it has more capacity. And you can get to Grand Central in about 25, 30 minutes, and also north to White Plains in about the same time. And again, the buses, the bus, the Bronx 39 and the number 2 train is up the hill at White Plains Road and 241st Street, plus the BxM11 bus. Next slide. This is an aerial view of the site right now. Many of you are probably familiar with it. It's basically one large parking lot and room for storage of other construction materials. The site basically is rented by the New York City Police Department right now for parking for their officers next door. And we would continue, look to continue that lease with the police department. They're looking to keep their officers there. They also park a lot of vehicles there. So that would be negotiated in the new development. They would get brand new space, which would actually be covered because of the development itself. And then we'd have parking for the residents and shoppers as well on this floor. Next slide. This is a bird's eye view of the buildings as you would be looking down at 3 different pods of buildings. The Wakefield Avenue Bridge is on your right, and then you'll go from right to left. You'll see the A1, A2 buildings connected, the B1, B2 buildings, and then C1, C2. And at the end of the presentation, where it comes to a point, is the park and open space and playground area where everybody can use it. There's also traffic coming in and out of the site from the bridge, which will be approved by DOT, and it's being designed by Sam Schwartz engineers. There will also be crosswalks, of course, and signalized stop on the bridge and a safe crosswalk to get to the Metro North station. Next slide. The site is a separate village, within the Wakefield neighborhood. It's about 300 or 350 feet away from the nearest building. When you go back to the east to the Bullard Avenue and that side of the neighborhood, the existing street work is, of course, the Bronx River Parkway, 241st Street, White Plains Road, and then Baldwin Street also runs underneath the site to the site right now, which is a small street, but it does get access into the site, an alternative means of getting in and out of the site. Of course, this is next to transit, which is Metro North, New York City Bus, and the New York City Subway. And one other thing we want to point out, as you know, the topography of this site is a lower point because obviously the Bronx River, flows downstream. White Plains Road is about 80 to 85 feet higher than this site. So when we start building, we'll be, coming out of the ground from a much lower elevation than up on White Plains Road, which is probably the highest point in the neighborhood. Next slide. Okay, so here we are looking as if we were coming in on a plane or so. This would be looking at the site. The renderings are not complete, but this is a preliminary version of what it would look like and the scale and massing of the site. You can see the bridge on the right side of the screen where traffic is, using the bridge and coming in off the bridge with signalized stop and also crosswalk. And then the retail, as we go down in the next few slides, you'll see it on the right building, which is the A1 and A2 buildings, and then going down to B1, B2 in the middle, and then the C1 and C2 buildings at the end of the slide, with also the park at the far left. Next slide. Here we are standing on the Metro North platform, Wakefield, as if we're looking, I guess we're going downtown in this version. The development would be on your left, and you would, either, go uptown or north to White Plains or downtown to Grand Central. And the site, you would cross the street and walk down the stairs. We're also looking to help Metro North make this ADA compliant, and they want other improvements, lighting and other, maybe a platform extension. We're not exactly sure, but it is an active station and it will become a lot more active in the future. Next slide. So here we are now, we're standing on the bridge looking at the development with the crosswalk, and you can see this is going to be where we're planning a supermarket right in the first building to service not only the population that lives here, but the community. And then we'll have other retail, hopefully a cafe, restaurant, daycare, etc. And you can see the road going into the site and crosswalk here. So this is how people will be navigating the site by car or by foot or by bicycle. Next slide. This is another view of that Wakefield Market in a more close-up version where we're in the plaza. And again, it's a great gathering place. It's welcoming to the community. Will be a good place to meet people, do shopping, and serve not only people living in Wakefield, but also people in up the hill in the more conventional White Plains Road, Wakefield neighborhood. Next slide. This is a view if we're looking coming down the bridge at Wakefield. We're on the cafe side, not the supermarket side. And people could be walking in or walking home from the train and getting into their apartment building or doing shopping on the way home. And this is just another version of the development. Next slide. Here we are now where we have room for a farmer's market, which would be going down into the development next to the A1 and A2 buildings where there's a large plaza. And this would be an ideal place for gathering for a farmer's market or other fairs like that outside of the conventional stores. Just give you an idea of the landscaping. Next slide. Dove, next slide, please. Okay, thanks. We're now between the A1, A2, and the B1, B2 buildings in a plaza where cars can turn around and navigate the site, plus people have a sitting area. And to your right on the screen, you can see it, envision could be a restaurant or outdoor seating. Again, just kind of like the buildings interact with each other, and it could be a very dynamic place for people to gather and you know, enjoy each other's company, whether they're taking lunch or, you know, having coffee in the morning or what have you. Next slide. Here we are going down the road where we're in the development on the right side, which is the west side of the development. And this is where cars would turn around before that C1 building. The C2 building is on the left, and the tower C2 building is in front of you. The park will be beyond that, and this just gives you an idea of how cars will come in and pedestrians, you know, it'll be separation of place and space with landscaping and sidewalks. Next slide. Again, this is now back on the east side, looking at the same version of the larger building, the C1 building in the forefront, and the C2 building to your right. Again, it's a great place. It'll be a very large place to walk and exercise, and also the cars have their own dedicated spaces. Next slide, please. Dove, and next slide if you can. Yeah, okay, thanks. Must be a delay here. Now we're in the park. This is the southernmost part of the park, which is my favorite view, where we have green space. This is a 2.3 acre park open to the residents and the public, where we'll have a playground and sitting areas and just green space and beautiful trees to take advantage of a piece of the land that comes together, and you can't really build anything. So we're using it as the best use of open space because it's not wide enough to build anything on, but it could provide a very lovely addition to the community and green space. Next slide. Again, this is another version in the park looking back at the C1 building. So now we're at the southernmost part of the development, the point. This will be a nice place. Again, people can walk, or you could jog the whole development if you want to, because it would be, you know, probably a couple of minutes to jog around the development. And the landscaping is being proposed by MPFP, who have done a lot of landscaping on large projects before. Next slide. So what the community benefits that we feel bring to the Wakefield neighborhood is obviously a better link to the regional economy with this development. $12 million is estimated to be pumped into the local economy because people who live here will be buying goods and services in the local neighborhood. We project at least 1,000 construction jobs using MWBE and local NYC hiring programs, as we do for all of our projects, and sustain 500 new permanent jobs in the local economy. There'll be a lot of people working in this development, working in the buildings, in the supermarket, daycare center, what have you. But there's also a spillover effect because we've studied this in a lot of our developments, that this development will create more job opportunities nearby, people, you know, serving the development. The Metro North station next door, of course, will be better access and easier to get to and safer to get to. Plus, it'll be upgraded. And then the new retail will include, of course, a supermarket, daycare center, convenience retail, and other shopping that people can use. Parking's at grade below the site. And then we're also saving a portion of the land. If we can accommodate a school in the future, we'd be happy to do that, or a large community facility space. We talked about the park, public park and playground, which is actually 2.3 acres, not 1 acre. Okay, next slide, please. And the total project overview is that we'll have individual building financings. Will include 3 mixed income family rental buildings, and I'll get into those incomes and rents in about 1 minute, 2 minutes. 1 dedicated senior residence building, potential homeownership building, and a total approximately 1,193 apartments planned in 5 buildings. Now these buildings are coming online in stages. It would be phased. We wouldn't. It wouldn't be possible to bring it all online at once. So you're talking about a development timeline of approximately, could be 6 to 9 years, if you will. That's a best guess. So it would be staged and be phased in over time. We're talking about 3 or 4 phases in the project to absorb the units, and there'll be a widespread affordability offered to residents who want to live here, anywhere between 30% to 130% of New York City's income, which is approximately 20,000 to 138,000 for the rental apartments, and between 80 to 130% for the homeownership apartments, which is 68 to 179. That's for a household. And of course, a total of 25% of the units will be permanently affordable under MIH, but the whole project is being proposed as affordable. So that's just a double security. Development's going to offer a wide variety of apartments, about 7% studios, 46% ones, 37% 2 bedrooms, and 10% 3s. So we have about 47% 2s and 3s, just shy of 50%. We're designing it for families and larger households. We also have a lot of 1 bedrooms for the seniors, mostly 1s and a few 2s. And then for studios, we're thinking alcove studios or something a little bit different than the standard offering to accommodate that household size. Again, as we mentioned, the NYPD would remain on the ground floor as our proposal, and also parking will be there on the ground floor for residents and retail customers. And if we need increased parking, we can always build another level of parking if it's desired or necessary. Next slide. Okay, this is a facts and figures slide, which I don't want to confuse anybody, but if you look at the colors, the 2 green bands going across, the light green bands are the mixed income family buildings. So that's buildings A1 and A2, and then building C at the end. Those buildings would be similar in rent and income. Those ranges, again, low of 20, high of 138. And then the ranges of apartment rents, again, under New York City, under Mayor de Blasio's housing plan, there's been this push for a wide range of income affordability to cast a wide net to provide housing to as many households as possible. This is based on that model. So under the rental model, the studios would be 410 to 1359, 1 bedrooms 521 to 1708, 615 to 2039 for the 2s, and so on. And the reason there's such a wide variety of rentals is because people make different amounts of money. So if somebody applies and they're a single head of household making $40,000, they can live in this building. Somebody who's a double wage earning couple making $135,000, they can move into this building. And that's the goal, is to provide widespread affordability to the community. The second building is in yellow, and that's the senior residence building. That's 168 units. And those incomes are going to be lower because typically this is your retired single or couple on a fixed income, or maybe they're working. So that range is $20,000 to $68,000. And then the rents there are $521 to $969 or $615 to $1152, depending on income. Mostly 1 bedrooms in the senior building, some 2 bedrooms, because we have found times where seniors are taking care of a child or a dependent or what have you. So we're going to accommodate for that need. And then the homeownership building, which is in blue, that would be 286 units. That would be designed for people making 80 to 130% of AMI. Typically, this would be like a co-op, kind of like a Mitchell-Lama co-op, where people would be, buying their apartment, have shares in the corporation. We would help get it subsidized through the city or other subsidies that are offered, and it would be offered, to people making a little bit more money. So 68,000 to 179, and that would be again 286 units, larger apartments, 125 twos and 46 threes, and that would represent a total of 24% of the development itself. So just to give you kind of a nuts and bolt view of what we're looking at and what we're preliminarily thinking about, this is how we'd like to accommodate all the housing needs in the community, Wakefield and in the Bronx that we've been building for years, and this is what we're proposing right now. The next slide, please. So the actions, and then we can turn over the mic back to the chair. The actions here are, there's a special map amendment from M11 to R71 with C24 overlay. There's established an MIH area, which would be option 1 and 2. And then large-scale general development zoning permits. So there's 3 of them. One is for modifying the applicable lot coverage regulations for large-scale development. The second one is to modify the applicable side yard height and setback for development. And the last one is to permit accessory parking garage in excess of 150 spaces, which is definitely needed on this site. The disposition of a portion of MTA property. MTA owns a sliver of land. It's like the width of a driveway. It's a portion of lot 10, which we will be purchasing to combine with the privately owned site here, which is lot 78 and 85. And then, of course, public or potential funding from public agencies, which can include HPD, HDC, or New York State HFA. Those are the slides we wanted to present to you tonight, George and Dr. Burke, and share. And we're happy. We have the full team here. If you have questions, legal, architecture, environmental, and so on, and government relations, and also the owners are represented. So we invite any questions. And again, we thank you for your time. So I turn the mic back to you. I hope that gave you a good summary. If does anybody want to look at a particular slide, and Dove can go to that slide.
Hello.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, Harry.
All right. Mr. Shulman, thank you very much. That's a very beautiful presentation. The slides are great. I recognize that you've identified all of the benefits, all of the pros to the community. I was just wondering if from your study and your preparation for tonight's presentation, you've identified any cons.
Okay, that's a fair question. I would say challenges. The infrastructure needs here, it's a good question. The infrastructure needs here are, I would say, on the higher side than normal developments. We have to build a sewer connection underneath Metro North, which we're studying right now with a micro tunnel. So basically, we have to tie back into the sewer network, which is in the Bullard Avenue neighborhood, which I think is a 60-inch sewer main. And we have Langen Engineering now studying that with Metro North. So that would be, I would say, a higher challenge in the development. And once we get that tunnel designed permanently, we will share that with you. The other, I think, I wouldn't say it's a big challenge, but we're building a podium. So building a podium means it's, it's a deck, and it can go fast. You can build faster than going into the ground 12 or 14 feet into the ground. We're not going to be removing, hundreds of truckloads here. We're going to grade the site. So actually building the podium will be faster, and also we're removing less dirt than normally in a big construction site. I would say one other, challenge, if you want to call it, we're trying to connect this site to the rest of Wakefield. I think it'll be identifiably connected once it's visible, and the bridge is re-signalized, and there's people walking up and down safe sidewalks to and from the site, and also going to Metro North. It needs to be activated. And I think once it's populated, it will be activated and connected back to Wakefield.
My name's Carl Spick. I'm the chairman. I was talking to you, but they muted me, so I'm unmuted now, and I have a few questions I want to ask you.
Go right ahead.
Can you? Oh, all right. I just want to make sure you can hear me, because I don't have a Zoom, so I can't I just have to, I listened to what your presentation was. It was an impressive presentation, but one thing I would definitely look for is, well, one of many things I would definitely want the station, Wakefield Station and Metro North, to become ADA compliant. That has to be part of the project, or none. And the platform needs to be expanded to handle the amount of people for 8 cars, which is the standard for Metro North. Most of the platforms, except for Wakefield, Woodlawn, and Williamsbridge, handle 8 cars. I'd like to see Wakefield be able to handle 8 cars. And the other question I have you, what is Sam Schwartz doing for you guys?
Okay, so, excuse me, Carl, Sam Schwartz is doing the transportation planning and also the environmental review. So we're in an EIS. We just did the public scoping of the EIS a few weeks ago. So we'll be preparing an EIS statement, environmental impact statement for everybody to review. So that's what Sam Schwartz is doing. We hear you loud and clear about the ADA compliancy and also the platform length. We're meeting with Metro North next week. We'll obviously bring that up to them.
Okay, the one thing, do me a favor, you can tell Sam Schwartz that he's going to be dealing with Paul Stricker. We've been friends for years.
Okay.
So,
okay.
So I did, because he knows where I come from, so I want him to be prepared.
All right, fair enough. They're on the line, so they're taking notes.
That's good. No, that's fine. Because I think Sam is one of the smartest people in the world. I did a lot when I was doing traffic engineering work. His people used to come to me for help when they needed something that was around by me. So I know I've dealt with him many times.
Well, he's well respected in the industry, that's for sure.
You better believe it. And the other thing is, what type of supermarket are you planning to put in there? Any major supermarket chain? Or?
Well, we haven't identified a chain, but we want it to be a large supermarket. Probably 15,000, 18,000 square feet. We want it to be a nice, beautiful market to service this whole population.
Yeah. Well, that's good because actually they need a good supermarket in that area. And don't forget, right to your west there is Yonkers.
Yes.
You go to the other side of the Metro North tracks, you got the Bronx River and you got the city of Yonkers.
Correct.
So, they may come into play eventually when you deal with Metro North because they have a little piece they overlook on Metro North.
That's right.
The other question, how far north are you going towards Mount Vernon?
Well, we stop at the bridge, Carl. So basically, the 241st Street Bridge is our northern boundary. And in fact, we will abut the bridge. We won't tie to the bridge, and there'll be an easement underneath the bridge for DOT to do maintenance and work and all that. So we don't go north of the bridge.
Oh, okay. Half that bridge is owned by Yonkers.
Okay.
All right, just for your just a heads up. From where the staircase goes down to Metro North,
Yep.
Anything west of there is Yonkers.
Okay. We've already met with DOT, and I failed to mention this probably 4 or 5 times, as well as all other city agencies. So we've had a very good dialogue with New York City DOT, which is also, deals with New York State DOT.
Yeah, can I ask you who you're dealing with at DOT?
Navarro Lopez in the Bronx office.
Hey, Carl, it's Navarro. I just wanted to pop in and just say that I've met with the development team here many times over the last several years, and they've, we've reviewed their drawings and plans. We've had great conversations where we gave them suggestions. They took those suggestions to heart, and these conversations are still ongoing. So they've met with my office. I've shared their plans and proposals with the various downtown divisions at 55 Water. So we've been in ongoing dialogue now for several years.
Well, I'm happy you're involved, Navarro.
I am too.
I am too.
No,
look, I know you. Look, ever since you've been up here, I've seen an improvement in DOT.
Thank you.
Okay. So anyway, I'll open it up to questions from the Land Use Committee. Anybody see any questions?
I have a question. My name is Richard Small, and I'm part of a union in the Wakefield section in the Bronx, and I represent a number of union members with District Council 9, the Painters Union. I noticed that in your presentation, you said that there will be over 1,000 construction jobs created. Would any of those jobs reflect union construction workers, whereby our youth in the Wakefield section through the apprenticeship program would be on your construction sites?
That's a good question. We are using Joy Construction to build the project, and we'll be happy to meet with local representatives. Certainly under New York City, we will not only meet and exceed the MWB and New York City local hiring, but we're willing to meet with any local trade groups or suppliers, contractors, what have you. It's a little bit premature to start the meetings, but you can certainly reach out to us and we'll get back to you once we get further down the road, because we have to rezone the site, and also start construction. But we're happy to have a dialogue at any time.
Okay, thank you for that.
Sure.
Any other questions?
There were 2 questions in the chat. I don't know if Harry or you want to go over that.
Well, let Harry go because I don't have a Zoom.
Okay.
All right, so we have the first question in the chat from Theodore James. Is there any consideration for a northbound access ramp to the Bronx River Parkway? I'll read both questions. The first one from Mr. James, and the second one is from John Isaac. John's question is, can you go over, please, the slide pertaining to how many housing units there are and the parking associated with the housing? So let's take Mr. James's question first with northbound access.
It's a good question. I don't know if I can answer it. COVID Saxana from Sam Schwartz Engineering's on. COVID, could you answer that question? I don't know if COVID is available.
Yeah, can you hear me, Ron?
Yeah, go ahead.
And Ron, go to the slide with the Bronx River on it.
Okay, we're going there right now. I think Dope, that would be the one more. There's a good, I think the aerial view of the lot shows that better.
Yeah, but I can answer the question and at a high level, which is where we are right now. So we will. That's an intersection that we will be looking at very carefully. We expect a large number of the vehicles from the site to be using to be accessing Bronx River Parkway. And
hi, excuse me, can you speak up, please? It's very hard to hear you, and we're trying to record you, so I need you to speak up, please.
I apologize. I'll speak louder. But no, we are looking at that in particular intersection and area very carefully. A large number of vehicles from the project will access Bronx River Parkway. That would be one of the primary routes for vehicles generated by the project. At this time, we don't have the data or the analysis to suggest specific improvements, but that's something we are looking at as part of the environmental impact statement analysis. And to the extent there are improvements or mitigations that are needed there, we will be looking at those options as we go ahead in coordination with the local agencies.
The second question was the housing slide. So let's go back to the housing slide and we'll talk about that for a second. Okay, so I don't know exactly what the question is, but again, the housing units are proposed in 5 different buildings. So A1 and A2 are connected. That would be mixed income. So there's 385 units in that building. Just lost the screen, Dove. Did the screen just disappear or not? George, can you see the PowerPoint or not?
No, yeah, it went away. I don't know what happened.
Okay, so maybe he lost his connection.
Yeah.
So just to answer the question, we have, again, 5 buildings, 1,186 units, broken down under a number of different types of buildings. So there'll be those mixed income rental buildings in the first 2 buildings, then the senior housing building, 168 units, homeownership building, and then the last multifamily rental. Parking would be available to all residents. Whoever had a car could apply for parking. As we build the site, we're building the A1, A2 buildings right off the bridge first. We'll determine the parking needs. Here comes the slide back now. The parking needs as we go forward, because we have to build that first level of parking. If it's necessary to do more, then we'll study that more carefully. Thank you, Dov. So I'm not sure if there's any other question about that. I'm looking at the next question as well. What building?
I guess in regards to the parking is not necessarily associated with the housing as they're built.
It's a good question, George. We're going to have NYPD having their spaces, and then we will develop a parking matrix where there will be parking around your building. So in other words, as you come in next to your building, you would park your car and have a key fob to get into an elevator, for security purposes, obviously. And then the NYPD parking would be separated. We will come up with a parking plan and share it with you once, it's fully developed. But there'll be access to, only one's building with a security key to get into your building from the parking lot.
And just to finish up on the parking, this is going to be MIH. So are you applying for any exclusions on parking? I mean, you have a significant number of parking, but I don't know if that, how it breaks down for each building. And I would imagine like the senior residence doesn't require parking, but you might add some. I don't know.
That's, again, it's a good question. Nora, I don't know if you're available to answer that, but again, our goal is to provide as much parking as possible. Obviously, there are waivers we can pursue, but we're building this large deck, which is the first level. So we're going to try to maximize the amount of parking for everybody.
Yeah, just to jump in, we're not seeking to waive any of the required parking. We're seeking, to accommodate and perhaps provide additional parking based on feedback from the community.
There's another question, Chairperson. I don't know if you want us to answer that or.
Yes, the question is what building or buildings will be phase 2 or stage 2? Will 241st Street be the only vehicle access to the complex? Also, where is there access for parking?
Okay.
And John has another question. I'll give you both questions now. Will there be parking per unit? Okay.
So I'll take the second question first. We can't guarantee one-for-one parking here. It's going to be as much parking as we can build. Okay, so that's the kind of the guiding principle here. What buildings will be phase 1 will be the A1, A2 buildings connected. Okay, that's where we're coming right off the bridge. The next building will be the senior building, which would be that 168 unit building at B1, right in the middle of the development. So as we would have all the people moving in basically into the first 2 buildings and then start construction on the second building or third building, which is the senior building. And that would be phase 2. Phase 3 would be the homeownership building. Phase 4 would be the larger residential building. And then last would probably be that community facility or potential school building. I think that answers the questions.
Well, I think you're going to wind up building a school there because the schools are overcrowded in the area. And if we have a large influx of children, which is a good possibility there would be, we're going to need another school building.
Okay, understood, Carl. And we've already discussed that with parties at B. All we can say is that we have space for it. That's not our financing trade. I mean, that's school construction authority, but we have space for a school. in the development.
Okay, well, that's good. That's good to hear. Because people build buildings and they don't think of what is required for the people that live there.
Understood. Again, a lot of people have been joining this meeting, and I just want to refresh everybody's memory. We've been working on this project for about 5 years. You know, we wanted to get this to this point where we have a development proposal, preliminary proposal, before we go into ULURP, so that you can all see it, ask questions, provide comments, feedback, and obviously we're going to respond to all of them. But we put a lot of time and effort and spent a lot of money on this project so far to get it to this point so that we can make a thorough presentation to CB12, and that's what we wanted to do. There's another question, a lot more questions.
Yeah, this is Robert Hall, the housing chair. I just want to know, you are 85 feet below 241st Street. What type
Mr. Hall, we can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I hear you a lot better now.
Okay. You are 85 feet below 241st Street. What type of flooding provisions do you have to offset flooding coming down that hill? I see that being a problem. And another thing is the Bronx River, if I remember correctly, all right, that is the end or the beginning of that major flood zone that always takes place. And I just want to know, what provisions have you provided or discussed during your tenure in evaluating this project?
Okay, fair question. I'm sorry, Mr. Hall, right? Is that right?
Yes.
Yes. First of all, the buildings are being built on a podium, so they're 30 feet in the air, 30 to 34 feet in the air. But I'll turn it over to our environmental team and also our architectural team to talk about any, flood zone protection. So, Koba, do you want to take that first? And then Dove?
Sure. Yes, as part of the environmental impact statement analysis, we will be looking at whether the site is within the designated coastal zone, and subject to that, whether to what extent the project conforms to the coastal zone policies of the city. So that's an analysis that is being undertaken, and what you mentioned regarding floodplains and coastal sea level rise, that would be considered as part of that analysis. And if required, based on the actual location of the site, also look at potential resiliency measures in that context.
All right, I say that because I question, you say it's for the podium, I question the podium. I want to know what provisions are being made to protect that area. That area is a very, very sensitive area as it lends itself to rain and storms.
So, Mr. Hall, I think we have one of the owners. PJ, are you on the phone? Because the owners have owned the site for 20 or 25 years or so. I don't think it really floods, and it's a parking lot now. PJ, are you on the call?
Yeah, I'm on the call. Yeah, we've owned that for over 30 years, and I've never even had a puddle on that parking lot. So, I don't know what else to say, but we've never had any flooding in the 30 years that I've owned it.
If I can add to it, the site, as you mentioned, is within a designated coastal zone, but it is not within the 100-year floodplain. The site is located outside of the 100-year floodplain.
All right.
I think just one last thing is I think the project will make adequate provision for storm water and sewer management, and that's something we can provide more detail, as we move forward with the project.
Okay. that sewage on 233rd Street that you would like to combine with is at full use. That's for certain. So just be mindful of that. I had another question with the breakdown, but you spoke too fast, and I'll get back to you with regards to that. And that's the breakdown that you have regarding the seniors, and the C1, C2, and the A1, A2. But I'll get back to you on that. Thank you.
Sure. This is an ongoing dialogue. We're happy to answer any questions, and I know there's a lot more coming in on the chat. We're always happy to answer questions after today. It's not a problem.
Can I ask you, what when you have runoffs from the buildings after a rainstorm or something, what action are you going to take that it doesn't run off into the Bronx River, which we're trying to clean the pollution out of there, so it'd be a more viable river. In fact, we have fish now, something we haven't had in years, and we don't want to get the river polluted again.
Understood. That's a good question, Carl. Dove, could you answer that on our stormwater collection?
Yes, I hope you can hear me. So we're going to meet the requirements for stormwater, on-site stormwater retention, whatever they may be. It's a bit early in the process to have fully vetted the requirements and the exact system. There is a natural slope to the site that we are maintaining. That slope occurs, you can see in the section here, that slope occurs from east to west, but it also occurs from north to south. So there is a tendency for stormwater, as opposed to sewage, which will be treated completely separately, to naturally gravitate towards the Bronx River direction and southward. So we are going to have to work with the sloping of the site to make sure that we accommodate all the necessary requirements to mitigate impact on the Bronx River.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Stricker, this is Harry. We have some more questions in the chat. In backwards order, we have a question as to whether 241st will be the only access for vehicles. And there was a question. Oh, Mr. James spoke. Mr. Shulman and team, why don't I ask, please, for you to respond to the questions in the chat?
Sure.
By summarizing what the question is.
Yeah.
It'll just eliminate my interruptions.
No, I understand, Harry. So the response about the 241st Street being the only access, to answer your question, there is Baldwin Street, where the cursor is right now, runs under the 241st Street bridge right now. Baldwin Street will remain and extend into the site. So it will go under the bridge into the parking lot under the site. So that's an alternative means, not as big as a road, but it's an alternative entrance and exit out of the site. 241st Street will be the main entrance into the road, into the development, which is the bridge itself. Next question, it sounds like there's room for a school, there are no concrete plans. I think that's fair to say. We have space for a school, we don't have concrete plans. That's a complicated process, and if you want, we can get into that further down the road as far as planning for a school. Next question is the parking lot on a podium as well? Parking lot actually will be the base of the foundation, the first level, and then that will be, right now Dove is showing you. So the parking is ground floor or base level of this development. And if there's additional parking needs, we can build a mezzanine or partial mezzanine level. We don't know, but that's a possibility because there's enough height. Next question is, can you further explain your sewer plans? Well, the initial plan right now is being studied by Langen Engineering, is to go under, and I'm trying to figure out, Dove, if you can move the cursor. We're going under that Metro North track, which is the New Haven line, back to Bullard Avenue, and to tie into that sewer there. Now, we understand this has been done in the Bronx and on a couple of other sites, and Metro North has confirmed that people have actually, gone onto their tracks with microtunnels, which are, several feet down from the tracks to tie back into infrastructure. So that's the initial plan right now, and as we go forward and we have the plan, we'll share it with you. But we're doing some borings. We've done 10 borings on the site, and then we've done one. We have to do 2 more borings for the microtunnel, and then we can design the tunnel and figure that out.
Yeah, and Ron,
Yes.
I was just going to add, it's worth noting that we are making an effort to move the sewage in the opposite direction of the Bronx River to minimize any possibilities of issues there.
Correct. That's correct. Somebody asked, let me just go up here. Shadow impact on the homeowners east of the complex. It's a good 300 to 350, 60 feet away. Dove, is there a shadow impact going towards the east from the buildings?
I can answer the question, Ron.
Okay.
We will prepare a detailed shadows analysis, modeling the buildings proposed on this site, and that will be included in the environmental impacts.
Okay, so we'll get that information to you guys once we have it. What is the best guess for a start date? Good question. We've got to get through the rezoning and all that and start, construction drawing. So it's a few years away. Call it, 3 years or so, give or take, for a start. It's just throwing it out there. Will each building have a basic community center? Every building will have its own amenities. The answer is yes. Every building will have, at minimum, if not more, a community room, a gym, lobby space. If there's outdoor terrace space we can create, we will create that. But we will definitely have a lot of amenities in every building for the residents. So that's a yes. Somebody else asked, with such a large influx of families, how will that impact the schools? Technically speaking, and COVID Suksana from Sam Schwartz can answer that, I don't think we have an impact on schools, but we are studying it carefully, COVID.
That is correct. There is a preliminary schools analysis that was prepared, and there'll be a further analysis that will be carried out. The preliminary analysis was reviewed by the school's construction authority and other agencies, and the results of that did not show what is deemed a significant adverse impact. But again, this analysis will continue, and again, the results of the analysis will be included in the environmental impact statement.
Right, and just to refrain, we are holding that space in the development for potential school if it's necessary. So there is ample site there. Somebody just asked, any city bus will be able to enter the village? Interesting question. We actually studied that initially. I'm not sure if the answer is yes. It could be a potential, but we're not planning for it right now. Again, COVID, do you want to respond to that?
Yeah, I think that's the correct answer, Ron. It potentially can be. In an earlier iteration, we had, in fact, seen the feasibility of routing through the project, and but as of now, the current site plan doesn't include that as a factor.
So I think, Harry, I've answered. If there's any other questions that I missed.
Yeah, there's just one more. What is the load capacity of the podium? And John just chimed in with one more.
Okay, load capacity of the podium. Dove, back to you. Architecture.
I'll be honest, I can't answer that off the top of my head. That's something we can get back to you with. Those studies have not fully been completed yet because we haven't actually done the full structural engineering of the deck. So it's a bit preemptive to answer that question.
All right, we'll get back to you on that one. I see the John Isaac has the question, what school level would be planned, grade school or high school? Again, we can't say there will be, but I think it would probably be a grade school if there was one.
Any further questions?
Yeah, I have a question, Carl. This is George. You said that there's access underneath on the, I guess that's the Bullard Avenue entrance?
No, Baldwin Street, George, Baldwin.
Oh, okay, sorry. Is there access from the podium to the 241st Street level or to where the buildings are?
Yeah, so right now, if you're standing on 241st Street, you're looking down into the site because it's 30 to 34 feet below the height of the bridge. So the podium will meet the bridge and will abut it almost like a bridge expansion joint where you will be walking right or driving right onto the site.
And you can drive from that to the lower level on the lower level of the podium is what I'm getting at.
Yeah, that's correct, George. There will be.
Okay.
Joe, if you want to explain the parking, how that will work?
Yes. So we will be providing an access ramp to the lower level from the upper level and vice versa. Currently, the ramp is being proposed to be in Building A. That's also so it will be available starting in the first phase, but also because it minimizes traffic further into the site, vehicular traffic further into the site, because people arriving and leaving are entering the parking right at the first building off the bridge.
Okay, sounds good.
Any further?
Sorry. I do have a.
Yeah, let me. Oh, I'm sorry.
This is some inside baseball now. There are a lot of commitments from city agencies. I mean, we have the borough commissioner on tonight. You have Ted Weinstein from HPD. There's a lot of different moving parts. You need the community board to start with the land use stuff. You're doing this in phases. What are the guarantees that this actually gets done from the beginning to what you've promised to the end? You know, is the city paying for the podium? Are you paying for the podium? What's DOT? Is DOT going to make amenities to the bridge? Are they making changes to the bridge? Are there guarantees that they're going to be their money for that there? Because right now we're having a conversation about that bridge, about truck parking that they're not doing anything about. So, you know, I'm just curious, are they now going to do stuff because, you know, developers are interested in doing this? Like, are we dealing with that? Like, what's going on? Are you confident that the commitments from the city are still going to be there several years from today?
So I won't talk to the DOT side, George. I'll let Navarro do that. To answer your question, the project costs include the podium, the infrastructure, and the buildings. So we've broken down the project costs into 5 different models to pay for everything here in 5 different financings. So the answer is yes. This is our plan to build everything in 5 different buildings, or 4 different closings, 5 different buildings. We're not planning to change the bridge. We're planning to abut the bridge. I don't know if there are capital plans to improve the bridge, and Navarro will speak to that. But we're planning on building this development as it's seen over a period of time. Now, this development team also built Webster Commons, if you recall, and I know Carl does. That was 5 buildings, 486 units on Webster, just north of Gun Hill. And that took us about 9 or 10 years. So we've done long-term projects before. We've also done St. Anne's Terrace, which is down 156 and St. Anne's, and that was 8 buildings, 641 units. That was done, 10, 12 years ago. So we're accustomed to large buildings, large developments with multiple buildings, and yes, we're committed to building this whole project.
Okay, and so there's no subsidy from the city for that podium, and
No.
you're just going through regular financing through HPD for the rest of the buildings.
George, I don't want it to be misconstrued. If we use city financing for all the buildings, yes, there will be city subsidy financing as they do every other building, whether
Yeah. But it's just for the buildings, not for any other infrastructure projects.
Well, it's all part of the building because we have to build a foundation. In this particular case, we're not going into the ground, 12 feet down to build that typical foundation. We're grading the ground and we're building up. And our foundation is a vertical foundation, like a lot of Mitchell-Lama buildings, Concourse Village and all the rest. We're built on platforms. So our foundation is a vertical platform, if you will. It's not in the ground 12 feet. De-water, break rock, and all that stuff. We're coming out of the ground with steel and concrete to build the parking, which is the foundation of the building. All the project costs, we've run all the numbers. All the project costs are in line with other HPD projects and financings, and we're not proposing to, ask the city for, oh, by the way, give us an extra whatever, because we are in term sheet compliance right now with our underwriting, and that's our goal, to remain there.
Okay. Is the podium being built as one structure, or are you going to build it in phases similar to what you're doing for the buildings?
It's a very good question. We would build, again, I'll speak a little bit out of turn here if the contracting team's on. I think we're going to be building a little bit more platform to accommodate mobilization and staging. So in other words, we have to build A1, A2, but probably a little bit more in order to accommodate construction, cranes, mobilization, and so on. That we can get back to on a very specific level once we design. We have preliminary crane plans, and we can do that later on. I can't answer any questions about the bridge. That's DOT.
That's fine.
Yeah. Is Novardo still there?
By the way, we lost Harry. He had to go. He had to step away.
Oh, okay, that's fine. I'll take it over, George. So let me ask a question. I think so. This is, as you know, this is Mike Burke, chairman of the community board. So I think for me, there are some questions as it pertains to the schooling, and I think I guess there's two things that's bothering me. I guess I'm happy that you want to build, but I think the order in which you propose the building, I think I heard the last proposed building was the home ownership option was the last building being built, and the affordable option was being built first, and the senior option in between there. So I think I question that, but I think what really bothers me is that, and as I said before, I know that a number of people ask the questions about the schools, and I know that that's a complicated issue. And I think I'm looking at his name, Saxena. Am I pronouncing that properly?
Saxena, thank you.
Saxena. Okay. So I think I think he made a comment as to not only the schools, but he said, well, it wouldn't be affected, and the studies show that, but then you don't bring the studies here. So, again, I'm a data-driven person. So if you guys don't know that, now you know. So I have to see data. So just because you say that the studies don't show that, until I see it and read it for myself, I won't say I'll be skeptical, but I'll be skeptical. And that's just maybe just due to how I was trained. So you're going to have to show me and everybody else that data before I believe that. So to that end, let's go back to the schooling question, because if you're talking about putting up around between 11 and 1,300 units of housing, you're talking about families. That component really should have been addressed and should have been solidified, in my opinion. This is just me speaking, before you came here, and it's not. So you're saying that as a potential school, it would have been better if you said it would be a definite school. We'd be doing a middle school. We'd be having this many classrooms, X, Y, and Z. And I know that's complex, but you've been working on this project for 5 years. So that's telling me that you had the time to work on it. You just haven't done it. And that's just my comment. Now, I mean, if anybody wants to address that, that's fine. But
okay, so Dr. Burke, yeah. I'll answer that. Number one, the homeownership building would be right after the senior building. So let's just review it, right to left. A1, A2 is first. Senior building is second, and the homeownership building is B2, and right in the middle of the project. Regarding the school, I can't tell you how many meetings we've had about the school starting with Councilmember Cohen at least 5 or 6 times now, Councilmember Dinowitz, the SCA, Borough President's office, and on and on. We've offered it, offered the location. We've met with the SCA several times, city planning. There's nothing in our power to tell you guys tonight that we promise you a school. We don't have the authority to do that. Now, if we have a school there, we would love it, because we think it makes a complete village, and we think it makes it a home run as far as the development. But we don't have the power or the authority to say tonight, September 13th, we're promising a school. We can't do it. But we've had probably 20 or 30 meetings about this school in the last 5 years. So I don't. Go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead. Only the SCA can authorize the school anyhow. They're the ones that control where the schools get built. And we are definitely overcrowded in PS16, which is only a couple of blocks away from where this buildings are going up. So the school is necessary, but SCA has to be the one to approve it and have it built.
And if I can clarify, we did prepare a detailed analysis for the schools, and it has been updated over time as the baseline data gets updated, and that those data and results. Well, the data is from the SCA in big part. The results have been shared with the SCA as well. We will continue to update the analysis, and that analysis and data will be included in the environmental impact statement as well.
That includes the kids that are being bussed out of there, out of PS16, right?
We will look at the entire school subdistrict, the utilization in the school subdistrict, and the change in the utilization in the school subdistrict, again, the elementary level and the middle school level as well.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, so I don't see any other questions in the chat. Let me see, let me make sure. I see, I don't see any hands raised. Let me look in the chat. I don't see, okay, I see something. It says parking lot will be well lit in camera. So that's a question from Mr. Isaac. So will the parking lot be well lit and will you have cameras there?
Absolutely. Yes to both.
Okay. All right. Are there any other questions regarding this? I'm making sure I'm looking at hands in the chat. Are there any other questions from anybody that you would like to ask before we close this topic?
Michael, I just have one thing to say.
Oh, yes, sir.
That the 241st Street Bridge, it took us 15 years to get Yonkers on board to rebuild the bridge about 15 years ago. So, I mean, the bridge was in such disrepair, it was about to collapse. And that's why Yonkers decided to pay for their half, or their quarter, actually. We have, New York City has 3/4, and Yonkers has 1/4 of the bridge. But without Yonkers working on their portion, you can't do much work on the bridge.
We were actually on the site, Carl, about a month ago or so with Councilmember Dinowitz, and we were standing right on the bridge, and they were working on the bridge. I forgot what they were doing, but there were a lot of workers on the bridge about a month ago.
Yeah, on the Bronx side, yeah, DOT was doing some repairs with holes in the bridge and the sidewalk and stuff. But if you're going to do work on the bridge itself, Yonkers has to be involved.
Okay.
Okay. I'm sorry, Mr. Stricker. Alfredo, you had your hand up a while back.
I've been having my hand up. I mean, can you guys see my hand or you're just ignoring me?
You know what, Alfredo, I'm looking at a different, for whatever reason, I have a different layout, and I'm looking in the participants.
Yeah, I was even going like this too.
Okay, my fault. I didn't see my brother. Go ahead.
It has nothing to do with you, Matu. It has nothing to do with you. So, hi everybody. Great presentation. GF Architects, I know them. They do nice work. They got a nice building going up on Jerome Avenue. This area here is a good idea. I'm all for it. I just got a couple of questions. I don't know if it's time because I had my hand raised in the beginning, so I don't want to go through all the questions. I know you guys got to come back.
Go for it. You have time. Ask your questions.
I mean, I don't want to. It's going to take too much time. I know they got to come back for other presentations, so we could probably touch it there. Are we voting on anything right now, or anything right now for the development, or they just came for the first time?
Actually, I don't think so. We want them to come back to us again, how the job is progressing. We had asked some questions earlier, Alfredo, and I'd like to have them answered before we take any type of vote on it. And one of them is the discussion with Metro North with the station platform extension and the handicapped elevators.
All right, Mr. Showman, that's your
Yes.
name? All right, Alfredo Figueroa, Chair of the Public Safety Committee.
Yes.
I'm also an expediter and a co-consultant, so I know this very well. I know you're asking for rezoning from an M1-1 to R7. Is that
Yes.
correct?
Correct.
Okay. You asking for waivers of the zoning resolution for lot coverage, density, and rear yards and side yards?
Right.
All right. Maybe we gotta touch a little bit more on that for our board members, so they can understand what that means. Like that later, when this goes through, nothing is missed. Because, you know, this is a big thing, and some of our board members, they probably won't understand exactly what these requirements for these waivers that we're asking for are. I know because I deal with this. So maybe next time you can just break it down a little bit more, or maybe have like a zoning sheet that you could just outline the reason why we're requesting the waivers is because the type of building we're building is not needed, and so forth and so on. In regards to the sewer system, is this going to be a dedicated sewer system, or y'all going to tap into our existing sewers? And the reason why I'm asking that is our sewer system is in our neighborhood, they're over 100 years old. And me, myself, my house got flooded with 4 feet of water because the sewer system couldn't accommodate the water that was going into it. So I just want to make sure that you guys are not going to tap into our existing sewers, and more water is going to go into that. Security for the outdoor space, a beautiful outdoor space. I love it. The plaza. Are y'all going to have dedicated security, or is this going to be something open to the public and NYPD is going to be monitoring this? Because when you put up open area like this, a lot of people are going to want to congregate and hang out there, which is all good. But, with that comes, issues. So I don't know if you guys want to provide security from the development point, or is it going to be an NYPD issue? Parking. You mentioned parking over 600 spaces. Is that parking free, or there's going to be like a paid parking for people in the neighborhood to park there and pay, or this is just only dedicated to the 4 buildings or 3 buildings, or is most of the parking dedicated to the condo and co-op unit owners? Very important for you to break that down the next time. And I guess when you guys come back, we'll have more questions. But if you could pick up on those when you come back, I'll appreciate it.
No, we will, and those are all good questions, and we'll get answers to all of those next time we meet.
Appreciate you.
Just one thing on the zoning.
Yep.
I just want to remind everybody, this is a large-scale general development plan, so that's why it has those waivers. And if you want, Nora Martins from Ackerman can explain that. It's it's one big zoning plan on a site, and that's why those waivers are there.
I think we can, at the next meeting, we can definitely get into more detail there. I think tonight we wanted to just provide an overview and introduction to the project. But yeah, as Ron said, the large scale permit, special permit in connection with the rezoning actually provides for the most control over the design and massing of the site. A lot of times when you see just a rezoning, you see an illustrative plan that shows what could be built under that rezoning. With the large scale special permit, we actually have to build substantially in compliance with what's being presented to the board and what we eventually end up with as this project evolves through the public review. So it is a great opportunity to get input from the community and from all the various agencies.
Guys,
and the plans actually have been reviewed by city planning's design staff, urban design staff, I think probably 5 times. We're getting comments back next week, so probably the 4th or 5th time. I've lost track. Yeah.
All right, thank you guys. Appreciate it.
You're welcome. You're very welcome.
Hey, thank you for coming out tonight.
Well, hang on, Mr. Stricker. There's a message from Mr. Weinstein in the chat. It says the DCP staff can give projected ULURP certification timing, after which the development team will return to the community board. So I guess that's Mr. Ted Weinstein, which I'm glad that he's here. Put that in the chat for everybody. So for those who don't have chat accessibility, I want to read that out. Okay, so is that it, Mr. Stricker?
Yeah, if there's no further questions, I would close the meeting.
Well, no, we have one other thing on the agenda now.
Dr. Burt?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah. Okay, I heard somebody.
Yeah, Dr. Burt, do you hear me?
Yes, I hear you. I can't see because it's Mr. James. Hi, Ted.
Okay, this is Chucky.
Oh, Chucky. Oh, hey, Chucky, what's happening? Hang on for a second. I thought Ted had his hand up. Hey, Chucky, how you doing?
I'm doing all right. I just wanted to ask one thing because I'm having problems just viewing. I heard some of the other good questions. I just want to just mention two things. One about with the storms that we having now, all right, and Ida just leaving us, that looks like it's going to be more under, underground level, right? I hope they take that into effect because after this Ida, I'm very nervous with that new project being well below ground level, with the flood. But I guess they're taking that into consideration. And the other thing is, when it was mentioned about security, would it be open to small security companies getting some of those contracts from the neighborhood so that we can employ some of the people in the neighborhood?
I'll answer the question. It's a good question, and we certainly would entertain that conversation about security. The plan is, of course, the project would be open to the public, but we'd want to close the park down at night. We don't want people hanging out there at night, and obviously, we want it to be safe. We want it to be safe, and if we need the security company, after hours, we would definitely entertain it.
Okay, because the reason why I brought that up, sir, is because we have so much construction going on. And I'm a retired New York City detective, and I have a security company, and it's very hard trying to get a contract, with any of the construction in the neighborhood for me to hire people in the neighborhood. All right, it leaves a very bad taste in the neighborhood when all of these security companies come from all over. It's just not right for the neighborhood, and we need people in the neighborhood in which they live to be able to earn a living in their neighborhoods too, because everything is going up. So I just hope you would take that into consideration, and I will be in on the next meetings also.
Absolutely, we will, and we want to employ as many local people as possible. We said that in the beginning of the presentation. It's our goal, and we do it on all of our construction sites. It's employ as many local companies, tradespeople, lumber houses, workers, laborers, etc. The goal.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Burke.
All right, no problem, Chucky. Hey, Ted, did you have your hand up? Did I see you with a question before we close this part out?
Yes, the question has to do with, due to the fact that this project is surrounded on both sides by train tracks.
Ted, it's kind of hard to hear you. Can you speak up, please?
Yeah, due to the fact that the project is surrounded on both sides by train tracks. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes. What consideration has been given to noise proliferation from the trains, and also in terms of people having access to the tracks, and that's a security issue.
Right. I'll take the first half of that, and I'll turn it over to COVID-6 Son of Sam Schwartz. So it's a very good question. All the windows in the buildings will be OTIC, I don't know what the rating is, but decibel reduction, super decibel reduction windows to reduce any noise from the trains. The trains actually come in and they do merge here at the bottom, or actually at the left side of the slide as they merge into one track. So they do slow down, which is good. As far as safety goes, we will have a very high fence, landscaping and a fence around the whole perimeter of the project. So nobody can throw. There's a vision of it. Nobody can throw stuff, or God forbid, we don't want anybody near the tracks. Period. So we have this landscaped fence boundary, which we're going to make it kind of a mural going around the whole, or most of the project, to keep people away from the tracks with landscaping and a fence to keep it safe. Kobe, do you want to answer the question about sound?
Yeah, we collected noise data, especially focused on the trains. This was done in June before the schools closed, and we'll be using that data. We'll be modeling it and using that to estimate what the noise levels are in the residential units most proximate to the train tracks, to make sure that the interior noise levels in those units are at an acceptable sound level. So again, that's analysis that will be included in the environmental impact statement.
Okay, so for the last time, I don't see any other questions. I'm looking in the chat. I don't see anything. I don't see any hands raised. Mr. Stricker?
Yes, well, let's close this hearing.
Okay, so gentlemen, we want to thank you very, very much for coming here to give your presentation on the Wakefield Village. Obviously, it's something that I'm sure that we will discuss amongst the community board, but also community members, as you've heard from both this evening, both in person and in the chat. So, you know, obviously you have your homework to do and we have our homework to do. And so I'm certain that we will come together again and congregate and, you know, figure out what we want to do from there. So again, thank you very, very much.
Thank you for having us, and we appreciate it. And we'll get back to you guys with answers to all these questions.
Not a problem. You got it. You got it.
One last thing. I want to thank you for the great job you did at Webster Commons.
Oh, thank you, Carl. Appreciate it. Thank you. All right. So we will be back to you, and George and Dr. Burke, we appreciate it, and the committee members. So have a good evening, and everybody stay safe.
Yes,
okay, you got it. Thank you very, very much.
Take care now. Bye-bye.
Okay. So what I want to do now is move to, I know we have a second presentation from the Department of City Planning. I wanted to try to share my screen, but again, I am, seems like I'm having issues here. Let me go to the window if I can. Yeah, I'm having issues here, whatever. I'm using a different different app here, so I apologize. And I got to get my computer fixed. So to that end, the second part of the agenda tonight is dealing with a presentation by the Department of City Planning on a permanent open restaurant citywide text amendment. So I saw where Manny is here, so I'm certain that he's going to bring us warm greetings from Department of City Planning. So Manny, if I'm wrong, then of course you can let me know, but welcome, Manny. Hello, Manny.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, and I was just saying, yes, so I do have greetings from our Department of City Planning. It's nice to see all of you, at least virtually, and hopefully we may see each other sometime in the future in person, very soon. Today, we'll be presenting the permanent open restaurants text amendment. It's going to be a joint presentation with the Department of Transportation. And from my team, I have Ben Huff from the Department of City Planning, Jutan Horseman, which you guys have seen before. And as a matter of fact, he was part of the previous project. He was listening in and taking notes. Fernando Ortiz and Laura Davis, all from City Planning. So he came to say hello. We also have Mr. Navardo Lopez from the Department of Transportation, who will be presenting the first half of this text amendment. Navardo?
Good, thanks, Manny. Good morning. Good evening, everybody. Good evening, George, Dr. Burke, members of the committee. My name is Navardo Lopez. I'm the Borough Commissioner for the New York City Department of Transportation. And as Manny said, I'm going to be co-presenting with him tonight our presentation on the Open Restaurants Program and also the amendments to the text, to the city zoning text. So, Manny, are you going to share your screen?
I am sharing right now. So you guys don't see it. Let me just try again. Can you see the screen?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, great. And actually, can you go to slide 2? All right, great. All right, so for the next 10 minutes or so, I'm going to be taking us through where things stand from a more programmatic standpoint with the permanent open restaurants, which will continue to give restaurants the option of sidewalk and roadway seating for outdoor dining. The program will look to better balance the many needs of the streets and sidewalks, keeping both restaurants and other users in mind. We're going to take a look at what has and what hasn't worked in the past, both pre-COVID and now during the emergency when developing future guidelines for open restaurants. But I want to make it clear that while this presentation is going to cover both sidewalk and roadway dining, DOT and city planning are asking the board tonight for your opinion on the specific sidewalk cafe text amendment. Manny, can you go to slide 4? As you know, the city had street and sidewalk cafes before COVID, but had far fewer of them. The majority of the cafes were administered by the Department of Consumer and Worker Protection. DOT did run one small pilot of public roadway seating, which we call street seats, but there were only 25 setups, mostly in Manhattan. Our understanding is that the relatively low participation in the BxCB12 program was in large part due to cost and process. Next slide. Over the past year, we've learned lessons that will highlight the opportunities and challenges that will be critical to informing how we proceed with creating a permanent program. We think the robust use of the emergency program is helped by 3 things. First, unlike the pre-emergency sidewalk cafe program, no location was off limits. Any restaurant with ground floor frontage and sidewalk or roadway space that met the criteria could participate. Second, the program was free and easy to access. Unlike the pre-COVID sidewalk cafe program, which required months of multiple review by multiple agencies. And third, the element of roadway dining gave brand new options to restaurants, particularly those that might not have enough room on the sidewalk to accommodate a cafe. It is also worth noting a few challenges that we encountered from the emergency program. First, the speed of the rollout and the fact that the program was built from scratch under emergency circumstances created some confusion. As DOT learned more about operating a program like this, and the program was then extended by the mayor into the winter months, some of the guidelines had to keep changing along the way to keep everyone safe. Second, throughout the program, DOT learned more about the challenges specific to the roadway seating. For instance, we've heard from other agencies such as FD&Y and MTA that there were issues with turning radius and safety signs being blocked. Safety is of the utmost importance here, and will remain so. So we continue to work with our agency partners on ensuring that these setups in the roadway and the sidewalk will continue to be safe. Third, enforcement has been complicated on multiple fronts. On the one hand, you have restaurants who are dealing with a lot and who felt squeezed and over-inspected by too many different city agencies. On the other hand, you had some communities, particularly the mobility impaired, who were concerned about under-enforcement. Next slide. During COVID, New York City suspended existing rules through an emergency executive order, and DOT was directed to create the Open Restaurants program, allowing restaurants to conduct their business in the public right-of-way. Since the launch of the program over 1 year ago, over 11,000 restaurants have participated, which have helped save about 100,000 jobs. By many accounts, this program has been a lifesaver, not just to the restaurant industry, but also to the city that has seen incredible life that outdoor dining can bring to our streets and sidewalk. Next slide. We anticipate that as in the emergency, DOT will administer a permanent program for both sidewalk seating and roadway seating with similar rules to the current sidewalk cafe, but it would be available citywide. We want to be sensitive to the traveling public, minding clear sidewalk paths and other rules around sound and hours of operation. Next slide. When finalized, specific design guidelines will be very clear and will revolve around these principles that balance the use of sidewalk space by a restaurant, but maximize the experience of openness and activation to the general public. For most of the city, we are proposing requiring 8-foot clear path or half the sidewalk width, whichever is greater. In some areas of higher foot traffic, the city is proposing 12-foot clear path or half the sidewalk width, whichever is greater. And in some special cases where it may still make sense despite a narrow sidewalk, we are looking at creating a waiver that would allow the clear path to go down to 6 feet. This waiver would be co-reviewed by the Mayor's Office of People's with Disabilities. Next slide. We think the introduction of the roadway option is a tremendous new opportunity for restaurants, especially those who may have narrow sidewalks. The city is working on how this will be set up permanently, but will have setups in parking lanes, except prohibited zones, maintain public safety, and have clear guidance and enforcement on sound and comply with ADA requirements. In the future, any roadway setup will have to look more what is like in this slide in the photo, not the fully enclosed structures that we've been seeing a lot of under the emergency program. Next slide. The city is proposing that the new program will not operate during colder months, but with some opportunity for a hardship waiver that would allow restaurants to keep their setups in place. Currently, under the emergency program, all restaurants will be able to keep operating uninterrupted through the upcoming winter season. Next slide. In looking at both moving the legal authority to run the program to DOT and in creating a new process for the roadway setup, the city is looking to streamline the review process as much as possible while leaving in place essential roles of agency and public review. Next slide. To make this permanent program a reality, 3 steps are needed to advance it. The focus for today is the removal of locational prohibitions through zoning. It's key to unlocking this full citywide universe of applicability and consolidating control and accountability for the program under a city agency. We are also working with the City Council, who strongly supports this program, to enact appropriate legislation which will update the laws governing sidewalk cafes and then create a new set of laws and rules to govern roadway cafes. Next slide. Following zoning and legal changes, we anticipate rulemaking that will formalize many of the program's design and application details. Soon afterwards, we will then open up a formal application window for the new permanent program. Though we are beginning a process of developing the future program, the current emergency program is expected to be in effect as is currently for the next year and a half. The expectation is that restaurants will have ample time to transition into a new process. If they choose to, have ample time to transition to a new process if they choose to, with minimal operational disruption. Changing zoning is the first critical step in making this program permanent. But as you can see on this timeline, there are multiple steps to developing a full program. During each step, we will welcome public input and public review. Next slide. COVID-19 has really shaped the way New Yorkers think about how our streets can be used, which has been a silver lining to the pandemic. We welcome feedback and encourage all to visit our website to submit comments as we develop all the elements of a permanent program. Once again, the roadway portion of this presentation is preliminary, and our primary purpose in presenting to the board tonight is to gather feedback on City Planning's proposed text amendment changes. specifically related to sidewalk cafes. With that in mind, I'll turn it back to City Planning to talk about those changes. Manny?
Manny, you're muted. Manny, you're still muted. Manny, there you go.
Okay, just bring up the presentation. Okay, thank you, Navardo, for your presentation. Next slide here. Unnecessary zoning restrictions stand in the way of thousands of restaurants from participating in outdoor dining past the emergency. This zoning proposal is key to unlocking the full citywide universe of ability, consolidating control and accountability for the program under a single agency, Department of Transportation. The proposed text amendment removed the entirety of Chapter 1, Article 4 of the zoning resolution and related text in special districts and other areas that relate to sidewalk cafes to fully remove zoning from dictating location of cafes. This will allow any restaurant to apply to DOT, sidewalk cafe. They can meet the required clear path and siting criteria. A bit of context. In March of 2020, there were roughly 27,000 restaurants in the 5 boroughs. 42% of these restaurants are in Manhattan. These restaurants range from small neighborhood cafes to more mid-sized, high-end dining establishments to multi-level catering halls for large events. The purpose of this presentation, we will be focusing on ground floor restaurants with access to the street, as it is these restaurants that have the ability to apply for a sidewalk cafe. Under the zoning resolution rules, which are currently suspended, zoning dictates 3 different kinds of cafes and where in the city they can be located. Most commonly, unenclosed cafes, which allows for readily removable tables, chairs, and fencing with no allowable overhead coverage other than umbrellas or retractable roofs. A small sidewalk cafe is an unenclosed sidewalk cafe containing no more than a single row of tables and chairs adjacent to the street line and can extend no farther than 4.5 feet from the building. Or an enclosed cafe, which is defined as extension of the building into the sidewalks using light building materials. Zoning held the geographic restrictions where these cafe types were allowed. The public review where cafes were allowed on BCP zoning and land use map solar application. Yellow allows only small cafes. Purple are areas where only unenclosed and small cafes are allowed. And green is where all cafe types were allowed. Importantly, see a lot of areas where cafes weren't allowed at all, even if the sidewalks were wide and conditions otherwise would have allowed it. Red are areas specifically prohibited from having cafes, and blue is all the residential areas of the city. To date, over 11,500 restaurants are participating in the Open Restaurants program. In particular, the city saw a huge surge of outdoor dining in the outer boroughs. 10,000 of the restaurants used the sidewalk for their outdoor dining setup. During the emergency program, 2,500 restaurants were permitted in areas that would have been prohibited or limited under existing zoning. But the proposed text amendment will allow them. Looking at the map on the right, in red are restaurants in specific areas that were prohibited by zoning. These include commercial, mid-blocks, certain special districts, under elevated rail lines, other named congested areas. In blue are all the grandfathered restaurants in residential areas. Zoning doesn't allow restaurants in residential areas, but many of these uses predate zoning, so have remained. We estimate there are about 2,900 citywide and 1,000 participating in the OR program. In yellow are cafes in zones that would have limited to small typology only. Other cleanup actions in the text amendment include removing definitions and cross-references to cafes, removing text that precludes operable windows that service outdoor restaurants, ensuring that no enclosure provisions require a restaurant to be fully indoors as a condition of the zoning district, and clarifying sidewalk widening text to ensure it does not conflict with operation of restaurants. So zooming in for our community board, Community District 12, had zoning rules that allowed cafes along commercial corridors. Highlighted in green, cafes not allowed on streets with elevated rail lines and in residential districts. Under the Emergency Restaurants Program, there was one pre-COVID cafe, which was licensed by BxCB12 as of 2016. You can see on the map, it's Nicholas Cafe. And the open restaurants and community 12, as you can see, dots, the red dots and the green dots, total of 23, 19 sidewalk cafes, and 4 road. And this is the referral. This project was referred, this text amendment was referred in June of this year for 90 days. And community boards and borough presidents have until September 27th to vote on this text amendment. And the emergency program, as you can see here, also runs into winter of 2020. Mr. Lopez mentioned the other details and programs are worked out. And that is my presentation, and we'll be happy to answer both Berto and myself any questions that you may have.
Okay, thank you, Manny and Navarro. Mr. Stricker?
Yes.
I'm just saying, you're the chair of the committee. Do you want to drive the questions, or you want me to do it?
You run the questions on this.
Oh, yes, sir. Okay, Alfredo.
Thank you, Dr. Burke. Thank you, Manny Navarro. This is a very, very, very good thing that you guys are doing, if I'm understanding it correctly. So when this first came about, I submitted, I think, maybe one of the top 5 applications to DOT on behalf of my clients to get their outdoor stuff up and going. And it actually helped them out because they were actually hurting. If this is going to remain permanently moving forward, that's a really good thing. Now, I have a couple of questions. So previously, sidewalk cafes, we had to go to DCA and get a special permit from them to operate a sidewalk cafe, and most of them weren't permitted in certain areas. So if I'm understanding you correctly, us amending the zoning resolution, that will eliminate that requirement and us having to file with DCA to get a sidewalk cafe license. That's one. fees.
So let me jump in and answer that question. So so there's several different things going on here, but basically, what you asked is correct. The zoning text is what sets creates the prohibitions on sidewalk cafes throughout the city. So and Manny, correct me if I'm wrong, the proposed text amendment would eliminate all those restrictions.
Wow.
Citywide.
All right. I mean, I have a couple more questions, but I want to let me go back to that one. So I know before when we applied for some sidewalk cafes, it will get rejected because some areas we cannot have it. Like for instance, underneath a train, we couldn't have an outdoor cafe because of the train and things falling from the train tracks and the bird droppings. So now that's permissible. You're saying eventually.
So right now it's permissible under the emergency program, and our expectation is that once we transition from this emergency program to the permanent program, it will still be possible because we're going to eliminate the restrictions in the zoning text, and then also we're going to bring all sidewalk cafe applications under DOT.
Beautiful.
So it'll no longer be through Consumer Affairs. It'll now be through, just like the emergency program, it'll be through DOT.
Beautiful. Couple more questions, Dr. Burke.
Sure.
I know some of these structures that are built on the streets, some of them are not adequate. They either dirty, no lighting, no heating, no ADA compliance. I know that DOT was cracking down because actually some people I know that were building some of these things, they weren't up to code, and DOT came out and gave them warnings. I'm going to assume that moving forward, there's going to be more enforcement with making these outdoor street seating more, compliant. I know something you mentioned that moving forward, some of the street seating are enclosed with, plexiglass, doors. They look really nice. There's some that look like houses, to be honest with you. So you're saying that those will have to be demolished and rebuilt to comply with that? Oh, wow. So
hold on for 1 second. Manny, can you go back to slide, I think it was slide 9?
Yeah.
It's the one that showed the picture.
That one. Go number 8.
Right? Okay.
No, one more. That one. No, I'm sorry. Here we go. That's the one. I'm sorry. This was slide. So this is the slide, and this is just like an example. But basically, we're going to want future roadway seating to look like this.
But what about the ones that we build? Are they going to remain like grandfathered or?
No. So this is why we are going to have a very long transition time from the current program to the new program.
Yeah.
We're not going to end it overnight. It's not going to be like tomorrow we say, okay, it's a permanent program. Everyone get rid of your current structures. The current program is going to remain in place probably for the next year and a half. So we're going to give folks a lot of time to transition away from what they have now to what we're going to be requiring. And, we're still in the process of developing those rules. We have not developed, a first draft of what the permanent program is going to be like. But the reason we're not going to permit enclosed structures in the roadway anymore is that we will not allow roadway structures to be set up year round. We're going to want those structures in the roadway to come down during the winter months, so that way we could still clean the snow.
Makes sense, 100%. Got you. 2 more, and then I'll let you go. These storm.
Oh, and actually, I want to go back to another part of your second question before I forget about enforcement.
Yes.
We are going to be creating a new dedicated enforcement unit at DOT specifically for the open restaurants program. Right now, we've been borrowing, staff and personnel from other parts of the agency that, work on other, items, and, working with DOB as well. So there's been a lot of folks whose specialty isn't about open restaurants who've been working on this. As part of the permit program, we're going to have a dedicated enforcement unit that'll solely be dedicated to this, that will know the rules inside and out, and will be able to work with the restaurants on what they need to do for compliance.
Two more things, I'll let you go, Navarro. The storm enclosures, as you know, 97% of these storm enclosures are illegal. They never get permits for them. They put them up. With this program that you guys are doing, these outdoor seating, I mean, is that those storm enclosures? Are you guys gonna crack down on them now, or that's gonna just remain? Because there's a lot of people that have restaurants that put them up in the coldness when the cold comes out. So I mean, are y'all gonna crack down?
So I think right now, no. Right now, we're going to continue enforcing the way we have been for the past year and a half. But we're going to come out with the new rules. We're going to be very clear on what those new rules are. And then once the permanent program starts, because what's going to happen is we will have an announcement probably by sometime in 2023 saying when the current emergency is going to end and when we will be taking applications for the new permanent program. And at that point, we're going to be telling folks what they need to do to be in compliance.
I know Manny said one thing about CB12. Give me 1 second. I know, Manny, you mentioned that in CB12 we have 19 sidewalk cafe applications for the roadways. That's kind of little, because I mean, just in Katona alone, we have over 15 sidewalk cafes.
Not applications, but those were structures.
Those are permits for outdoor dining.
That's it. We have more than that, but that's another conversation. Anyway, thank you guys. Thank you, Manny. Thank you, Navarro.
I just wanted to respond a little bit on that. Why we don't see the need for enclosures in the future. I mean, beyond a number of reasons regarding safety and visibility for turning and stuff like that. Last winter, we did not have vaccines approved yet. We still had a ban on indoor dining. The permanent program is really a focus on outdoor dining, not indoor dining. We're planning sort of a permanent program that lives beyond the COVID-19 pandemic, and these restaurants will have the ability to have indoor dining, safe indoor dining. The outdoor dining is really more of a bonus, and will be helpful in the years to come as these restaurants recover. But this all goes back to the first point that you brought up, Alfredo, which was, zoning acted as a gatekeeper on who could have sidewalk cafes and who couldn't. We've learned from the emergency program that many restaurants are able, to successfully have outdoor dining. It's not a neighborhood. It shouldn't be a neighborhood criteria. It should be a siting criteria, and making sure they meet all the other requirements, ADA compliance, the clear path, stuff like that. So I just want to say, that's the point of the text amendment, is kind of just removing those geographic restrictions, which we think held back outdoor dining.
That's going to help out so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Have a good night.
Okay.
Thank you.
Anybody else with questions? I don't see any in the chat because I have two, but I'll hold mine to the end. Anybody else? Okay. Well, let me ask mine then. So, can we go to Manny? This is in your presentation. Let's go to. Well, let me actually. It was under slide 6. So we have to vote on this tonight because I think it comes up on the 27th, right?
Well, the deadline is September 27th.
Yeah, I know. And our board meeting is the 23rd. So we have to vote on this tonight to recommend. The committee needs to recommend. I hope we got all the committee members here, because my computer's cutting up. But if not, we have to bring it to the general board. But under slide 6, if at present the emergency rules state that, the emergency rules, let me go back. Right now, if we were under regular rules, you cannot have a sidewalk cafe under elevated tracks. So that would eliminate what the White Plains Rural Corridor, correct? Which I think you had on the slide.
Yes.
Right. So right now, because it's emergency COVID protocols, those prohibitions have been lifted, right?
They're suspended at the moment. We have an emergency program. So, you know, certain aspects of the zoning regarding sidewalk cafes and certain parts of the admin code are suspended, which is allowing any restaurant to really apply for a sidewalk cafe.
Right. And again, that was slide 10. And so, of course, with the zoning text amendment, that would eliminate all that. Now, you know, Alfredo asked some very good questions, because I guess in my mind, the only really sidewalks that I envision, and I can be dead wrong, and this is where I want board members to chime in, are on White Plains Road and on parts of Boston Road. I mean, I know there's some on 222nd Street. There are two restaurants there, and I think there's one on Eastchester. But
Manny, can you go to the side with the map with the regulations?
Yes, I'm on my way.
Right, and that's what I'm saying. So I think in our our community district, I guess, and that's what Alfredo was saying. It really, I guess, well, you guys have less than what I've seen. You know what I mean? So I've seen a lot more than what you guys have registered. So I guess, you know, people just being entrepreneur, you know, I was about to I just realized I was about to say something I shouldn't say, but people just being, you know, entrepreneurial and putting up sidewalk cafes. So in other words, this would allow them to do that permanently, is what I'm hearing, correct?
Well, so what we're looking at right now are the sidewalk cafe regulations as they exist right now. If you're on a road that's green, you can apply for a sidewalk cafe. If it's blue, it's not allowed because it's a residential district. So there is no regulation. It's not that they're just not, it's not regulated to allow them to have a sidewalk cafe. They could have a restaurant there because the restaurant could predate the zoning. So this won't legalize restaurants everywhere, but it would eliminate the burden on anyone who's on a street that's blue here. They would be able to apply for a sidewalk cafe. The red, that is specifically they're prohibited
from
applying for a sidewalk cafe, because we tend to talk about these cafes being under the elevated railways. I don't know if that's always necessarily true. They're on a street that has an elevated rail, you know, over the right of way. The sidewalk, they tend to be set back a bit from the maybe not the roadway structure, but the sidewalk cafe tends to be set back away from the elevated rail line. So this would remove zoning. Like basically, if this text amendment doesn't pass, we'll go back to these rules. Anyone on a blue or red would not be allowed to have a sidewalk cafe. So then, Manny, if you just go forward 2 slides. So there was only one cafe before. We talked about that. And on the next one, so there's a total of 23 to 46 cafes in the district that we have registered.
Okay, that's what I said, that you have registered.
That's a cumulative number. It's not, they total up to each other, but 23 have both a sidewalk and roadway cafe, 4 have just a roadway cafe, and 19 have just a sidewalk cafe.
Oh.
So, yeah.
So let me ask this question. This is for Novato, and I'm hoping he's still here. Are you still here? Because this is I'm
I'm still here.
Okay, I'm gonna throw this. Now, you came to the community board, and I'm glad that our second vice chair and transportation committee chair here is John Isaac, and your team gave a beautiful presentation on rehabilitating White Plains Road, which I can say, you know, I was at the 222nd Street Block Association meeting last week, and they actually lauded those plans. So now, if we approve the text amendment, how does it affect, like I said, because there's several restaurants that are in a prohibited zone now that if we vote for this and approve it, would be eliminate that. How would that affect your, how would that affect your, what's the word I'm looking for? Why am I drawing a blank right now? Redesign of White Plains Road.
Right. So something that we're working on, and I mentioned this earlier in the presentation, is that we will be for sidewalk cafes as part of the permanent program. We are going to require a minimum clear path that the restaurant has to provide. And on places like White Plains Road, since it's a heavily trafficked location, we're going to require a much longer clear path. So, for example, on a smaller residential street, I think we're looking at requiring right now a minimum of 8 feet. So if you want to put up a sidewalk cafe adjacent to your restaurant, you have to allow at least 8 feet. Now, on a street like White Plains Road, because it's much busier between the restaurants, the businesses, the fact that it's a bus corridor, it's a subway corridor, we are going to require at the bare minimum a 12-foot minimum path. Meaning that if you set up on the sidewalk tables and chairs, there still must be 12 feet completely unobstructed between where your frontage of your sidewalk cafe ends and where the curb is. On locations that are very wide, we're going to ask them to require half of the sidewalk frontage has to be clear. So in places, so the way this would affect, this would not affect our plans in terms of, we're still moving forward, it's still going to happen, but we're going to make sure that wherever restaurants set up a sidewalk cafe, there will be at least 12 feet, if not more, of unencumbered, clear sidewalk path.
Okay, there's a question in the chat from Ms. Benitez.
Did that answer your question?
Yes,
Dr.
yes,
Burke,
yes. I'm totally content with that answer.
Right now we're thinking that guidelines are going to be 12 to 8. When we come to you and other boards with a draft proposal, it's possible people may say, hey, that's not enough because of all these other considerations. And we may go back to the drawing board and make it maybe wider, or keep it the same, or come up with something else. But right now the thinking, and this is still preliminary and it's subject to change, is 8 feet on the smaller residential streets, 12 feet on the busier corridors.
Okay. So there's a question in the chat from Ms. Benitez. It says, is Gun Hill Road highlighted as a quote unquote green corridor? Can't see the details very well. To me, it looked pink. Ms. Benitez, I mean, again, I may be going colorblind here as I age, but under the prohibited, it looks like it's pink. I don't know if that's orange. Is that orange where it's prohibited? She's asking Gun Hill. I'm sorry, I'm looking at White Plains. Hello. Yes, Gun Hill is green. Yes, so the question is Gun Hill Road highlighted as a green corridor? Can't see yes, that's green. So that means that everything is allowed on that corridor, right?
It's allowed under the existing zoning, and it will still be allowed in the future zoning.
Okay.
I mean, most of the restaurants that are participating in outdoor dining, and again, I'm questioning my color blindness, but on the next slide, they are green. So, there's restaurants there, it's legal, and they had cafes before, but this will just be removing that as like a burden for restaurants as they're applying for it. And they'll focus on the clear path and setting criteria.
Okay.
Navarro, I have a question. If you take a look at Katona Avenue, where we have tons of seating in the street, some of the places are not sitting there, but they keep the area closed in case they want to open it up again. We lose a lot of parking. There's a lot of other businesses on the street. And when you come to park, you can't park. In other words, they had outside seating in the street and they stopped it, but yet the barricades and everything else still sit there. And some of them are across from, I believe Katona Avenue is 45 feet wide, and you have a restaurant situated on the west side with seating in the roadway, and then you have one on the east side, and it almost narrows it down to about 24 feet to get through, which is very tight.
So the seating in the roadway has to be within the parking lane. The parking lane on most city streets are about 8 feet.
8 feet, right? Correct.
Right. So it has to be within those 8 feet. We can, I think I know the restaurants you're talking about because I don't know if I mentioned this to you guys, but I am now a resident of Bronx 12. I've now been living here in Community Board 12. Yeah, I've been. I moved.
As they say, you're moving on up.
Right. I am another Bronx Borough Commissioner at DOT that is now living in the Woodlawn area, as two of my predecessors have.
Yeah,
Carl, right. So I'm very familiar with the restaurants you're talking about. I do believe they are within the guidelines that we've permitted. However, this is something we can always, I can have an inspector go out and double check just to make sure that they are within the 8 feet. To your other question though, about, what happens if they have the outdoor seating but aren't using it. Right now, just because of the nature of the emergency program and because of the resources, we're really focused on, are these structures safe? Are they within the limits that we've prescribed for them? A future program, the permanent program, I think we will take into consideration, usage, meaning that if you apply to set up roadway dining on the roadway, then we're going to expect that's going to be used continuously. If it's not going to be used continuously, that potentially could be a violation of the terms of service. But that's something we're still working out on. And I think that's a really good point. And it's something I definitely will want us to consider, that, if you're going to, use it or lose it. But that's not the way the program works right now, but it's very likely how the program will work in the future.
Thank you.
Okay. George, do you have any questions? Okay.
No.
Oh, okay. So our district manager doesn't have any questions. Okay, so Mr. Stricker, it's back on you because we need a vote. Before I go, I don't see any other questions in any hands, and I don't any. Alfredo. I see Alfredo's got his hand back up. Okay, Alfredo.
Sorry, guys, Mr. Huff and Navarro. I know some of these businesses, they're using the whole frontage that they have. Like if they have a 50-foot frontage, they're putting a sidewalk street usage of 50 feet. You know what I mean? Like the one, for instance, in Katona, I'm not going to mention the restaurant, but they utilizing 50 feet of street because their restaurant frontage 50 feet. Is that going to, moving forward, is that going to be the same situation, or are they going to only limit them to half of their frontage? Because again, some of their frontage could be 50 feet, but within that 50 feet, they probably have a kitchen that's within 20 feet. So that,
I think that's something that we have to consider, during the emergency program. Obviously, the goal was let's get restaurants all the help they need. So the simplest way to sort of organize the program was you could use your entire frontage.
Yeah. If
we're going to go away from that format, it's something that we would have to, really consider and come up with a new formula. We're in the beginning of developing that. But again, I think that's another really good comment, and something that when we come back to you with the first draft of the program, it's definitely something to talk about then and consider.
All right, guys. Thank you.
But right now, we haven't made a decision one way or another.
Okay. Mr. Huff, you said something?
But yeah, just, many 50 feet of frontage, that's pretty large. That's not the case in most of other parts of the city where they may only have 10.
Exactly. My point exactly.
The most concern has been that restaurants are exceeding their frontage, and
they are.
program, I could say that will not be the case. They will be limited to their frontage because we don't have a mechanism to permit them to use frontage outside of it. During the emergency program, some restaurants have exceeded their frontage, have used the adjacent space with the consent of that landlord. But in the future program, restaurants will be limited to their frontage. They will not be able to exceed
Thank you, guys. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Being none, I will take a motion from the floor on whether we approve the plan or disapprove it. Anybody want to make a motion from the land use?
John Isaac. Hang on. So, Mr. Strickland, let me let you know who's here from the Land Use Committee. And forgive me, my computer's been cutting up. So, as you know, Harry had to leave, your vice chair, but who's present here right now from Land Use is Ms. Benitez, Ms. Brosati. You just heard from Mr. Isaac. Keisha Lago Martin is here, Mrs. Martin. Ms. Cindy Blair is here, Mrs. Bond. Your two members who are not here are Mr. Carl Lanzano and Mr. Anthony Reed.
Okay, so we have a quorum.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so
So John Isaac made the motion.
Okay, a second, please.
Second. Second, Keisha.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Approved.
Aye.
Okay, it's approved. Land Use Committee approves the recommendation of City Planning and DOT.
Yes, okay, good, thank you.
Thank you all for your time.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, everybody.
Navarro, thanks for coming to Woodlawn. We're happy to have you.
We're loving it so far. We've been here for almost a year, and it's been great.
Really, that long? And I haven't run into you?
Yeah, well, you will eventually. I mean, but yeah.
I'm not doing my job because I used to run into Connie all the time, and I see Kilkenny twice a week.
Yeah, well, I'm out and about. I'm always taking the kids for a walk, so you will see me probably chasing after a couple of young ones.
Well, I see a guy running down the street chasing some children. I know who it is.
Yeah.
Okay, have a great one.
You too. Take care.
Thanks, everybody.
So, Mr. Strick, is the meeting over?
Yeah, I'd make a motion. We close the meeting.
Just for the record, I'm here.
Oh, sorry, Mr. Lanzano. I'm sorry. Oh, so the only board. Okay, thank you, Mr. Lan. That's almost like your dad correcting you. You know, Freddie, your dad corrected. That's like your dad correcting you. I'm sorry, Mr. Lanzano. So, all right. So, only person that's not here is Anthony Reed. So, on that note, Mr. Stricker, did you close the meeting?
I make a motion that we close the meeting. I need a second.
Second.
Okay, a meeting officially closed at 20:44. 21:44, I should say.
All right. Take care, Mr. Strick. Take care, everybody.
Everybody have a good night.
You too.
And thank you.